There is a confidence crisis right now that not many people are talking about because it doesn't look like failure. It looks like competence. You're functional, you're responsible, you're doing what needs to be done. And because nothing's technically wrong, you keep telling yourself that you should be fine. But underneath that competence, something feels off. You second guess yourself more than you used to. You hesitate where you once trusted yourself. You feel capable but disconnected. That isn't a lack of confidence, that is a lack of self-trust. That is one of the most dangerous places to live because it's not dramatic, it's quiet enough to ignore. Welcome to the Inner Launch, where we talk about rebuilding your self-trust, reclaiming your identity, and creating your next chapter from the inside out. I'm your host, Christina Volkovich. This podcast is for the people that feel like they're doing okay on the outside, but on the inside, they feel slightly disconnected and not aligned anymore. This is where your next chapter begins. So here's why this confidence crisis is so easy to miss. Because self-trust doesn't disappear overnight. It erodes slowly over time, through small moments of hesitation, self-doubt, and override. You don't just wake up one day not trusting yourself. You get there by being responsible, by being adaptable, and by being reasonable. You learn how to function without fully trusting yourself. And over time, functioning becomes your standard, even if it costs you connection to your inner voice. You're not falling apart, you're managing, and managing quietly replaces alignment. So this is what the quiet confidence crisis actually looks like. You replay conversations long after they happen, not because anything necessarily went wrong, but because you want to make sure that you did everything correctly to the best of your ability. You question decisions you've already made, not because they were bad decisions, but because trusting yourself feels unfamiliar now. You ask for input even though you already know the answer, because outsourcing certainty feels safer than owning it. And you stay longer than you should, in relationships, in roles, in routines, not because they're right, but because they're predictable. And predictability feels safer than trusting yourself with change. The cost isn't chaos, it's compression. You start shrinking your decisions, managing your desires. You stop asking yourself certain questions. Not because your questions don't matter anymore, but because answering them would require action. You're not unhappy enough to change, but you're not fulfilled enough to feel alive. And that middle ground is where people lose years. And yes, it happens to everybody. I could tell you a time when it seemed like on paper my life was going really well. I had a good paying job, I had food in my stomach, a roof over my head, I was married, I had friends, I was going to work, a great job. But at the end of the day, I was just kind of going through the motions. I wasn't feeling fulfilled at my job, and it just kind of left me feeling empty. Like I knew that there was more, but I wasn't quite sure what there was or how to get it. And at the same time, why was I unhappy? Like I had all of these great things, but yet I still felt unfulfilled. And that's when I realized that nothing was actually wrong, but something was missing. If you're listening to this right now and thinking, yeah, that kind of sounds like me. How did I end up here? And this may not just be a work-related thing. This can be anything. It can be a relationship, work, whatever. There are a lot of scenarios in the world. But a lot of times you think, how did I end up here? And that answer isn't weakness. It's adaptation. So we adapt to so many things in life. Adaptation is when your nervous system does something because it learned that it keeps you safe. Safe does not mean happy. It means connected, accepted, and not abandoned. So speaking up once created conflict, if trusting yourself once led to loss, if having needs made things harder, your system adjusted. You became more careful, more agreeable, more self-monitoring. Not because you chose to, but because your body learned what worked. Here's where adaptation quietly takes over. It stops feeling like something that you learned, and it starts feeling like who you are. You don't think, I adapted. You think, I'm just not decisive. I'm easygoing. I don't like conflict. I overthink. But those aren't personality traits. They are survival traits that work so well that you stopped questioning them. And once a pattern becomes your identity, you stop asking whether or not it fits anymore. So this is how adaptation shows up. It shows up quietly. Not all at once. You don't ask, is this right for me? You ask, will this disrupt anything in my life? You don't choose based on alignment. You choose based on what feels less risky. And the more often you choose safety over alignment, the harder it is to tell the difference. I was married for a while and I was constantly asking, hey, can you help me? I'm cooking, cleaning, doing all the laundry, doing the yard work, working 6 days a week, making more money than he was at the time, and everything else, doing the grocery shopping. He basically would just go to work, come home, wait for food to be cooked while I cooked. And that was all he had to worry about, was just eating food. That was it. He would come home, take his clothes off, leave them by the front door, and just eat food. It sounded like a really great life for him. But for me, I kept asking, hey, can you help me? Can you please not leave your clothes by the front door? Can you please put them in the hamper? Anything that would help me. And what I found was I would get really frustrated when the small things that I asked for never got done, and he would get really frustrated because he was tired of me asking. He thought I should just handle it. And so eventually I stopped asking and I just learned how to do everything by myself. So I adapted in that situation. I adapted to a lot of the situation I was in. And that's something that we don't realize. We slowly over time adapt to whatever our situation is in order to fit us at the time. And what that really does is kind of leaves us out of touch with who we are, because we don't really know who we are anymore. We just became somebody else. We adapted to become who we needed to be in those moments. And again, yours may not be a relationship. It could be a wide variety of things. But it all comes down to you adapted to fit what you needed at that point in time. And the cost of adaptation isn't immediate. It looks like delay. You delay decisions, you delay endings, you delay beginnings. You tell yourself that you'll choose differently when you have more clarity, more confidence, and more certainty. But what you're really waiting for is permission to trust yourself. And while you wait, your life keeps moving, just not in the direction you want it to. So if this resonates with you, I want you to hear this clearly. You didn't break. You're not broken now. You've adapted. And adaptation isn't a flaw, but it also isn't meant to be permanent either. The version of you that learned how to survive is not the version of you that you were supposed to build a future with. And understanding that is where self-trust begins to come back. I want you to take a moment here and ask yourself this question and answer it honestly. Because this work only matters if you are honest with yourself. Change comes from you being honest. So ask yourself this question: where in my life am I choosing safety over alignment? And then ask yourself, what feels risky about choosing myself there? You don't need to change anything today, but once you see it clearly, you won't be able to unsee it. Once you see how adaptation shaped you, the next question becomes unavoidable. If I've been overriding myself for years, why don't I trust myself now? And that is exactly what we are going to unpack in the next episode. Not at surface level, but at the moment it actually happens inside of you. This is your reminder that you don't need to have it all figured out. Real change doesn't come from rushing it. It comes from paying attention. You just need to stay honest with yourself, keep choosing what feels aligned and what feels right to you, even if what feels right to you is small. If today's conversation resonated with you, I want to invite you to subscribe, send this to a friend who may need to hear it, and see how we can work together in the show notes. This has been the very first episode of The Inner Launch, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye!